78. No?
Yes,
So
prof.
what we, yeah, thank you very much. So what we have here is an example, an example of a stating claim for, basically. Exactly, stating claim for. Well, first, maybe you need to look at this, to the three components of the claim for, claim for. One is the type of assessment records that you need to obtain. Second, the potential sources of inconsistency. You always have to do that part in the assessment procedure and assessment tasks. And three, the different groups of students for whom the assessment is intended. No? Yeah. Then you have a little explanation, where the author tells you to remember, no, this. No, the assessment records are consistent. The assessment records have to be consistent across the different aspects of the assessment administration, different assessment tasks, different assessors, and across different groups of students. No, so in other words, your assessment has to be clean, no, and clean of every of any suspicion of inconsistency. No, well, okay, and so then we have this. I think it's on the next, maybe on the next page. Example of a stating claim for. No? Example of a stating claim for. So maybe it's on the next page. Yeah, can we go to the next page then? Yeah, the author is giving us the same example that we saw in chapter 4 and chapter 5 and chapter 6. So it's basically the same setting, no? The same setting. It's the same, digamos, the same assessment task, no? The same. Yeah. So it's a teacher who wants to who has two purposes in mind. No, the first purpose is to make sure that students who pass, no, the grade are ready for instructions at the next level. So it's a summative decision. And of course, to decide this, the teacher will need a lot of assessments, no, that he has collected throughout the school year. No? Yeah. And the second purpose is to help the students improve their speaking and to improve his teaching. Yeah. Well, obviously, for example, maybe he wants to determine which students need more reinforcement, who needs maybe tutoring, or who need extra activity, extra homework, etc. No, those are summative decisions. And on the part of the teacher, he wants to improve his teaching, maybe his teaching techniques, his teaching methodology. Okay, and so for example, he wants to know if some students need feedback, no? And he wants to know if he can provide students with feedback. The quiz or the assessment is based on a unit of instruction. ¿No? Entonces es una prueba de unidad, ¿no? The typical unit test. And the task is very simple because it's level 1. I understand. It's describe animals from pictures by speaking. Right. Okay. Okay. The next part that you read here is all the explanation of the administrative process, not the administrative procedures for assessment tasks. So in other words, it's what you, for example, if somebody asks you what does your assessment consist of, then this is what you respond. No, you say, for example, I'm going to call my students in pairs. No, I'm going to explain the instructions to the students, the procedure. I'm going to give the first student a picture of an animal and give him time to describe to the other student. And then you do the same with the second student. Maybe you ask them to interact, one asking the other a question, and vice versa. So it's the explanation of what the test consists of. And well, but here also you have to include what you do with their performance. Now, for example, in the last 3 lines, for example, you or the teacher here enters notes for students, for feedback the next day on the recording form. At the end of the assessment, the 2 students return to the class, and then the teacher calls the next pair of the students for their assessment. So pretty much what we did I told you in the last session, we did when we had an oral exam. We called the students in pairs, and we had them interact with the teacher and with each other, with the students. And so that's the description of the administrative procedure. Then we have the scoring, the scoring method here. So there's a rating, the criteria. For the criteria, you have a rating. It could be a very simple rating scale, for example, 3 excellent, 2 okay, and 1 needs improvement. The score reporter is, for example, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. Maybe you can have those 4 elements, right? So grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, because it's only level 1. This is on the next page, so right here, that's the recording form. So you have to do this for each student. Great. And so yeah, and then if we go back to the last page, and so the last element in the scoring method is the procedure. So what the teacher listens, individually to students' responses, scores, and then the teacher calculates, the figures that he enters in this recording form, some feedback, to give the student the next day, and students need to see this and get a copy, and maybe, if possible, sign this. So that is the scoring method. Okay, and so well, then we have an explanatory note. Maybe what we see in the second line is important here, in the second paragraph. In deciding which level to rate a student's speaking, the teacher needs to consider 2 things: the specific learning objectives that are being assessed, and second, the level of speaking that he or she believes demonstrates that the student has minimally achieved these learning objectives. So if the student is speaking at this level is okay, you give them 2. If it's below the level, 1, and if it's more than the level, you give them 3. Give them 3. Yeah, but usually assessing speaking is difficult. It's difficult because it's only on your appreciation of what you think or you hear at that moment. So well, that's why it's important that you have this chart, this recording form, of course, and also this table where you explain the possible sources of inconsistency in scores. And so if we go on to the next page, can we go to the next page after the recording form? Exactly. No? Here. Administrative procedure, scoring method. The next one, the next page. Page 81.
I don't have, I think.
You don't have that one. Okay, great. Well, it's only the first part, no, where you have the assessment records, no, assessment records. And so the author presents here the possible sources of inconsistency in scores, no. And remember that there are three categories here, no. Maybe you can go back to the chart. I don't know if there was a chart in. There were three aspects of inconsistency. Let me see here. Identifying. Yeah. Going back to page 76 in identifying possible sources of inconsistency. No?
Yeah.
So there you can see. That is, if you go back to the previous page. Here, yeah, ABC, no, inconsistencies in the way the assessment is administered. Yeah, so you have basically this, no, inconsistencies in the administration of the assessment. Okay. For example, here the author mentions, for example, different times, no, different times or different days of administration. So certainly this might influence a little bit, no, on the records, no, the records. Different administrators in different pairs of students, and different administrators to different groups of students. No, but usually, for example, if you're working alone, no, if you don't have an assistant, or if you don't have a rater, no, basically the inconsistency in administration of assessment might be only the first one, no, that you give them at different times or different days, no. So you want to make sure that if you have to give the students the quiz, digámosle, on a different date, you want to make sure that the conditions are exactly the same, okay? And if it's at different times, you want to make sure that students don't talk to each other, no? You want to create the same environment, no? Give them the same time, giving them make sure that the room is the same, with the same light, that the material that you use is clear, you know, for example, listening. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is inconsistencies across different assessment tasks, no? Across different assessment tasks, what you see here. For example, here the author mentions these, no? For example, possible sources of inconsistency could be, for example, the fact that you give different animals in the pictures. No, you give different pictures to different students. So maybe someone that gets the picture of a dog has it much easier to explain, because dogs are very, very popular, no, and they're pets. No? It's more difficult if somebody has to explain, maybe, for example, an elephant or a whale. No? Yeah, so you want to make sure that everybody gets more or less the same, cards with animals that represent maybe the same difficulty of explaining. No? Another one could be differing amounts of detail in the pictures. And three, differences between the students who make up the pair. Differences between the students who make up the pair. So maybe if you put a good student with a very good student with a low student, maybe the good student might help him, no? Or you might have a different perspective, because one student is doing well, you assume that the overall presentation was good, and so maybe you entonces se crea a little bit of bias there, no? So you want to make sure that that you give the same kind of pictures to more or less the same type of students, no, with the same level, more or less. And then in number 3, where's number 3? You can see maybe on the next page. Inconsistencies in how the students' performance are scored. No? Inconsistencies on how students are scored. That's the third one. Where's that? Yeah. Yeah, and so well here the inconsistency in how, yeah, here, no? Inconsistency in how we score students' assessment performance. And so the author here mentions 2, no? Different applications of the rating scale from one student to the next, no? And number 2, different applications of the rating scale from one pair to the next. Yeah, well, this is very difficult to happen, no? But yeah, because if you have the same rating scale for everybody, well, you don't change that scale, no? And you try to make it fair for everyone. However, maybe what could happen is that maybe because you have very little time, for example, this used to happen to me, that when we began the oral exam, the first students had to answer a lot of questions. We spent 10, 12, 15 minutes with the first pair. And then because we only had 2 hours, at the end, we found ourselves with maybe 6 students, no, to evaluate, no, and we had only 15 minutes. And so we had to decide that we're going to give each pair only 5 minutes, no? And so for the first students, it was 10 minutes, and for the last, only 5 minutes. And so sometimes we couldn't finish the form, no? We couldn't finish the recording form, no? And so, for example, that created a high level of inconsistency, no? El tiempo, no? El tiempo is also a factor that you have to take into account. So maybe that's something that could happen, no? Great. And so and that's all about the example of stating claim 4, no? Claim 4. Well, I'm going to try, because I see that Avi wasn't able to get these pages. If you can find them, I'm going to send you maybe the pictures, so at least you can read that until we find the original pages, right? And also because you need, no, I'm going to have to send you the pictures, because I want you to do activity 1, activity 7.1 and 7.2 for homework. Yeah, so I'll send you the pictures right after this class, no? So homework is activity 7.1 on page 81, and then activity 7.2 on page 83. Basically, what you have to do is complete the forms, no? Complete the form, because here you have the scoring method. You have a lot of information. You only have to fill some lines. In 7.2, you have to describe a little more, but basically it's the same as the example of stating claim 4. Is basically a similar exercise. Okay, so I'll be sending you this in a few minutes, no, for your homework, and which we will check on Monday, no, if you have any questions, if you found any problem. And then I'm going to ask you if somebody can download, somebody has access to the book, if you can download chapter 8. We're going to do chapter 8 on Monday, no? Developing assessment task templates. Yeah. Let me know if you have found those, if you have found that chapter, or I can send you the picture so that you can read and have some clear idea of what we're gonna do on Monday. Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. And yeah, great. Okay. Well, it's already 7:30, and so there's no time for anything else. So we'll resume on Monday. Okay, with the new lesson. And okay, and good luck. No, do your homework, review. We've done a lot in the last 2 weeks. I think there's a lot to reread for better understanding. No, and that's all. Okay, enjoy the rest of the night, and have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Prof.
Professor.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Take it easy.
Enjoy too. See you.
Bye. See ya.